Okay.
Great.
So, I know there's some pictures out because I troll the Zenfolio site. So who wants to be first up?
I got something. It's not finished, but more exciting.
Go for it, Matt.
All right.
Oh, I might have to
Have to
enable the
enableize me.
there we go. That should do it.
All right.
Well, what's the name of that thing?
That's the Booger Man.
Boogeyman, yeah.
All right. You can see it's finely detailed here, but on your screen it may look like junk, but that's the transmission here in bandwidth. But when I got my 2600 mm and was smartly using M42 extension tubes, I've talked about that before. This is what I got, and I thought, I'm just gonna flush the toilet on it. But then I thought, as I was kind of getting into the PixInsight LRGB processing, I thought, well, hang on here a second. Let's just crop this thing. So this is luminance, and unfortunately, and this is another lesson I learned, is I shot 3 hours of luminance, and it doesn't look great here. I shot an hour of red, an hour of blue, and then when I was checking the corners and saw all this shadowing, I thought, oh, screw this. So I didn't finish shooting the blue. Not that there's a lot of it there, but it was only an hour. Words of wisdom is finish what you were doing because you might be able to figure out a way to process it later. And of course, it'll be gone soon. But anyways, I did some work on cropping and processing that luminance issue image, and I threw the stars back on after playing around with them. So I just luminance stars only there. But so it's a third or a quarter of the way through. But it might turn into something. It's not going to be spectacular, but Dave, that GHS just it rocks.
Oh, good.
You can play and play and play with that. It's great.
Yeah.
And able to tease out some of the on the dust in the background. Again, that's luminance. It's a little bit light there. I suspect a lot of that's HA, but I'll find out. But it just
Matt, did you try to do flats on each of those filters? Because you might be able to get rid of some of the vignetting.
I did, and it
Yeah.
might have helped on some. And
Oh.
cloudy nights, people were saying, if you have that issue, expose much further to the right side with your flats. I tried that a little bit, and they said it might help with correcting some of that hard vignetting, but it didn't really get any better than this. So I just cropped in, and it saved most of it. And it might turn into something, but it's no harm, no foul. If it doesn't, that's fine. It's a learning exercise. The solution seems to have worked, going with M48 and shortening, and the field looks flat. And I was able to get some SHO on the cone, and also did the triplet. Ken published first, so he he gets the trophy. But hopefully I'll have something coming out there too. So just having a lot of fun with this mono.
Well, did you open up? Did you recently update your PixInsight in the past month?
I think so. There's a couple of images on there, but
so if you go to your processes, all processes in there, do you have that menu?
Processes? You talking about the old
where it lists all your processes?
Top of the screen.
Oh,
top menu.
Oh, you're talking about PixInsight here. Okay.
Yeah, there's a new process in PixInsight.
Oh, for gradient?
Yeah. It is the bee's knees. And
is it good? I haven't loaded
it will
that build yet.
Well, when you open up that, there's what's it called? Gradient correction.
Okay.
And it is just the bee's knees. There's people out there saying, I don't even need to take flats anymore. Like it'll get rid of dust motes. It'll get rid of all kinds of things. So try it out. There's some videos out there on how to use it.
Nice.
There's basically two knobs you need to turn depending on how big your subject matter is and how complex the gradient is.
So David, is this something you do after DBE or instead of DBE?
Oh, instead of DBE,
So
instead
these
of
guys go away.
Grasspert,
Yeah.
instead of Grasspert, it's just, it really is the bee's knees. Everyone on the video channels is talking about it. I've tried it myself and it works.
So you could have mild vignetting, you could have clouds.
Yeah, you can
anything,
have
right?
complex
What's
gradients.
it called,
and
David? Gradient what?
Gradient correction. So it was included in the last major update for PixInsight, which is a bit of a pain in the neck. I wish PixInsight didn't do that, because you essentially have to reload all your scripts. And if you've got the graphic card acceleration for the Star Exterminator and that, you have to re-put in the TensorFlow DLL.
Mm.
Well, I don't know how you do it on a Mac.
It just all happens, Dave.
You don't.
You just throw the PixInsight in the trash bin and then you reload it and it just
Start
all seems
over.
to go like magic.
Yeah.
Mm.
But once you do that, you will be rewarded. So
Yeah.
before proceeding too far with your cropped image,
Yeah.
give it a whirl.
Try and fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't really look that bad, actually.
Well, it isn't. It isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see a bit more in the blue.
Yeah.
But that's like 15 minutes, so it's not, that's an unfortunate part, but there's not much blue there. But
Yeah.
stars. So yeah, so that's me. So I'll return the screen.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Who's next? In order of the screen. David, do you have anything?
No, I've been busy doing other things.
Brock?
I've got a couple I haven't published yet, and they're kind of not even completely done, but I could share where I'm at. So I also did Leo triplet. So
Wow,
can you guys see that
Very
okay?
nice. Yeah.
pretty nice.
Zoomed in quite close. It's almost a bit too tight, but haven't had a lot of time to do much processing. I just did this with the stars intact because there were some little galaxies in the background that when I did the star extraction, they kind of got messed up. And I was trying to preserve some of the faint galaxies that I could see. And so I left the stars in. But it was some good seeing. So it was actually going in toward the moon getting brighter and brighter during that clear patch. So
Yeah.
ended up with quite a lot of brightness in the background. But
You got lots of great detail though in those
Yeah.
galaxies without blowing out the cores.
yeah,
Totally.
they turned out okay. And then I also did
Well, just before you leave, I
Yeah.
love those two galaxies on the right.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all interacting,
yeah,
but the one on the upper, it's nice and regular and a nice
Well behaved.
well-behaved
Well-behaved, yeah.
spiral.
yeah,
And then the one below is having a bad hair day, right?
yeah, it is
Like-
totally.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Now it's just, I just marvel at the difference between those. Like, and you see there's a lot more
Mhm.
red in that one below. So there's a lot more
Yeah.
stars getting created. It's like someone
Yeah.
just took a stick and poked it into the beehive, right?
Totally.
And all of a sudden the bees start flying out.
Does anybody
there's-
know how distant the galaxies are from each other? Like, are
I
they at
don't.
They're not at
They're-
the same plane. or
They're
anything.
all interacting, so they're all fairly close.
It looks
Okay.
like really faintly there's some interacting galaxies way, way in the distance
Yeah.
here too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And another one there, and there's another one down at the bottom here.
Oh yeah, that one. That one has a little nub on the end of it.
Yeah.
Too
Interesting.
many galaxies. Wow.
Too many. Yeah, it'd be nice to go at this from Arizona with like a 1 meter or some CDK 700 or something like that that's
Mhm.
can resolve some of that stuff.
Brock, do you know the bright star at the very, very top? Which one that is?
I don't. I
Oh,
could
okay.
I
I'm just
could look
curious.
actually. Do I have I could
I'm
pencil it.
curious because it's way brighter than any of the rest, right?
Yeah.
it's
Oh.
Delta Leo.
Oh,
it?
okay.
Hmm.
I'm making that up. I don't know.
Oh, you had us all going there.
We need a plate solve to tell the truth, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
So Brock, something you might not realize is the seeing in Arizona isn't as good as you think it might be. It's darn dark.
Well, fair
it-
enough.
There's a lot of whining going on where I used to live. That everybody moved there for great seeing, and it isn't there. It's on average 3 arc seconds on average.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, that's not great. We get
No.
better seeing here.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm looking forward to getting my scope set up here so I can actually do something with them. Everybody actually sets up their scopes in New Mexico, which is about an hour away.
It's
But then
better.
I was
problem with that
about to say New Mexico would be the place I would go now.
Yeah, but the problem is it's in New Mexico, and that's next to nowhere, you know.
Right.
Well, so
Oh, Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
we have
Sorry.
members in New Mexico, you know.
You?
Yeah, what?
Yeah, we do.
I also got some time on NGC 3190, I think it's called, and there's
lovely.
some interesting. I think these are interacting. I haven't really read up on it a lot, but there's an elliptical here, which I thought was just a really, really bloated star, but it's actually an elliptical galaxy. But and there's a ton of small galaxies in the background, but it's a bit. I've got some bloated star issues. I haven't really. I got to put a bit of time into it. It's just sort of just quickly integrated everything and dumped it out.
Is
So
the bloating from overexposure, Brock, or
I think they just happen to be. Yeah, it probably is, but
Yeah.
I should probably try doing an extraction and processing separately and
Oh,
tidying it
yeah.
up. But
And my stars look like that from my big telescope.
yeah, I
Mhm.
mean that's part of the problem with
but-
having a bigger telescope is
Yeah.
you're zooming
they're
in.
fatter?
They're
Fatter
fatter
stars.
because you're collecting more light, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You
Oh.
kind of got a double whammy of you've got a bigger aperture which collects more light from each star, and because you've got a larger aperture, you can condense that into a tinier spot,
Mm.
right? So you got more light being squished into a tinier spot on your sensor, right? So you're going to bloat.
Would aggregated narrowband give you better stars then? Because you would have less exposure, I guess.
You would, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of
But-
course you're going after galaxies, and you kind of want the broader.
Yeah, you want the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But deconvolution will make them smaller,
Yes.
rounder, and brighter.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when you put the stars back in,
Mhm.
you can always use one of the star reduction routines to make it smaller and dimmer.
Yeah.
So at the end, you kind of got full control.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's lying a bit because at the end of the day, the stars aren't brightened in proportion to whatever else there is you're showing, but
You could do a separate star exposure, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's another option.
Or just turn the gain down on the one.
Yeah.
Just take the existing one and turn it down.
Yeah, well, I maybe I'm gonna play around a bit more with trying out gain zero. I got such good results on the Orion Nebula just using gain zero because it really helped tame all the bright stars.
What's unity on your camera? It's not 0, is it? It's like
I don't
100 or something.
remember on the
I don't think you
ASI.
can get to unity. I don't think it's unity
Oh.
when you're at gain zero. With
Yeah, I
the
don't know.
2600 mm, I think it's 0.8 is the lowest gain that you can use.
Mm. Low gain means higher dynamic range, or
Yeah.
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 But the sensor is so sensitive.
So is gain just like ISO on a camera?
Yeah,
Mm.
kind of.
Because the higher
I
the
think-
ISO, the less dynamic range you have.
I
Right.
think it kind of depends, because there's some sensors which are, they call them invariant, like they're really just one one speed, so to speak, and then some of the other controls adjust it so that they're less or more sensitive.
The problem with cameras is they're weird units because they've been around for so long. So there is a conversion between gain and ISO, but it depends on the camera, and it depends on, and even the gain depends on what camera you're using to define the gain.
Sounds complicated.
Yeah. But it essentially does the same thing. That's great, Brock. Those are really nice.
Thank
Yep, lovely.
And you holding out on us, or?
Was that me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see if we can find something here.
Ken's looking a little sleepy because he spends every night taking pictures.
I spent 4 nights taking pictures and it's gonna take me 2 months to get over it.
Yeah, it hurts.
Well, you're going to Japan. You can get your sleep there.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck, yeah.
So the Leo triplet, this is mono. I think about 245 subs or something like that. I don't know how I got that many, but that's what it ended up being. And I did bring out the HA in it, which was kind of cool.
Mhm.
Well done.
Yeah.
My plan is to do this again with the 8-inch. And then try and amalgamate the two, put them together. And then really try and do a good processing job on them.
That's gorgeous.
So somebody tell me, when you use different telescopes, that's okay, right? I mean, PixInsight rationalizes that somehow, right?
Yeah. Supposed
Okay.
to, I mean, I haven't tried it yet.
You-
That's
Okay, all
what
right.
the exercise is all about.
You can do, but I've never actually done that on the same target and combine them.
Well,
Yeah,
Dan Posey's the expert on that. He's done that many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious what happens if your optics aren't totally flat, because there might be a little bit of kind of weird kind of curvature or something going on.
Well, you're going to have to do a wet blanket transformation between them anyway, so that'll
Yeah.
be taken care of. You declare a reference image and then hit everything to it.
The plate solver sort of figures any it takes account for some.
Oh, of course, I keep forgetting. It knows what the stars are.
Yeah.
So Joe, is the wet blanket kind of like also known as rubber sheet? Like I've heard of.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Same thing?
yeah,
Okay,
same
yeah.
idea.
Is that
I
a
mean-
mapping?
Yeah, it is.
It
actually.
is, yes.
It is a mapping thing.
I'm kind of lost. What are you talking about?
When you
Oh,
try to
this-
fit things like there, I mean, if you think about mapping, it's about projection based on, I mean, we have an oblate spheroid for a planet, right? So typically when you map things, it's mapped in regions or sections. And then when you start joining together, they may not match, the edges may not match. So there's something called
flat maps don't map onto a curved, irregular
Exactly.
curved
No.
surface. It's simple
Exactly.
as that. So it's going to be a compromise.
Yeah.
Unless you use a wet blanket.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the bad old days way before AI, when all the AI was done by this.
Yeah.
It's actually good now for us old guys where the AI upstairs isn't working so well. Now, guys like Zen and Matt, you guys have to still think about it. And of course you too, Brock.
Thanks.
Joe?
You-
Don't know anything. I'm sorry.
well, Joe, you took a picture of the sun recently, didn't you?
Oh yeah, that's pretty pathetic, but I did. Yeah,
I-
maybe when we get into solar, I'll have something to say.
Okay, because I was saying to David, or the rest of them before you guys got here that you know, even if we have a slight eclipse here, it's always interesting to see what spots are available on at the same time, because that's
Yeah.
always cool. Some of the best spots I've ever photographed were during partials, you know, where not the whole thing is, you know.
And
blotted
also,
out.
I mean, if you have your HA telescopes set up, I mean, you'll have a lot more time than we will on the ship. So you'll be able to have time to actually set up and do some
Mhm.
HA because you're only getting a partial. So, you know, you got lots of time. And having a partial with the HA disc will make it more interesting.
Oh, for sure, because when you guys are in total, you'll get the helmet streamers, right? And we could
Yeah.
maybe overlay that on the proms, right? That we can see with the HA, right?
Never know.
Okay. We'll get to HA, we'll get to the solar stuff and shortly here.
Yeah.
Ron, anything?
No, well, I've got one thing I've been playing with, but no, not a lot. Let me see if I can do something here.
So what has your weather been like, Ron, where you are?
Terrible,
Terrible. Okay.
terrible. Can you see that?
Yeah,
Yep.
nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
So
That's good.
after I was embarrassed to find out from Dave that there's a better way to process narrowband, I was foolishly not really understanding the process and processing each of my filters separately and didn't quite realize that you could do it all at once. So I went back and redid this spaghetti nebula or whatever you call it. No, it's the jellyfish. It came out better. I'm still not pleased with it, but I'm learning a little bit at a time. And there was that one, and this one here, which I have to reprocess because this was done doing the filters separately too. So the Flaming Star Nebula. So yeah, I'm probably learning more than I'm imaging time. So, but I'm still having fun.
When you do, say you do it all at once, Ron, do you do like a combination of the masters and process that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did. I ran the masters separately in WBPP and then tried to combine it all, and
Yeah.
was getting really weird results like this here with the stars and stuff. This star, when I did it that way, came out red with a blue dot in the center. Anyway, so I'm learning a bit at a time.
You'll never stop.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I do. I
That's a
know.
good
So
thing.
having fun. Thanks.
And you know, part of the advice giving is you really just try things for yourself, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person, right?
And
Well,
nothing
you know
will
what?
blow up.
For me, it's just the process of learning. I just enjoy it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get frustrated with it.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
And last but not least, Zen, you got
Yeah, I have a couple. So kind of same, I also did the Flaming Star a while back. And I also had a bit of trouble kind of keeping the luminous stars at the bottom kind of under control. And so the more I was stretching my individual, I was doing HA and O3, it was a dual narrowband filter that I was doing separately. Especially in the O3, I was really having trouble. The more I stretched it, the more I was getting a lot of noise from there. And so like this is the learning part where I like this image, but like I think there is more data If I can, oh, am I not sharing? Sorry, guys. Is it sharing? No.
Now it is.
There it is.
Please
Wow,
accept
nice.
it.
That's
Um,
nice.
Yeah, so that's the one that I was saying, trying to keep the luminosity of the stars under control and struggling a little bit with my stretching. Alternatively, before I cropped it in to kind of take those stars out. So there's a lot of detail, and I'm
Mm.
really not sure. I'm still finding my personal style, I guess, between a little bit more subtle with more detail. I really like tight stars versus the nebulosity popping. So I'd love some feedback on those two and kind of what you guys prefer or think would be better.
Then I do notice that you like your skies. I mean the blanker areas
Mhm.
a little bit darker. I guess it's stylistic, I guess. I notice a lot of people like to make them brighter.
Yeah.
I don't know which is better, but
So you're talking about the dark at the top there.
well, just overall, because if you lifted it, like you made it brighter, I guess, it would open up some things. But it is dramatic this way, though,
Mhm.
which is kind of neat. Like
Yeah, I'm
the saturation.
sure Dave will talk about this when he starts to talk about printing, but when you're processing something like this image looks great on a screen, but it will look terrible on paper. So it's a whole different game when you decide where you're going to view this image from.
Yeah, the gamuts are quite. I mean, gamut as in the way the color displays is totally different between transmissive and reflective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even worse when you use offset, but I think most of the printers now are kind of RGB based, but they're still different from the screen.
And how would you achieve that out of curiosity? Is it more stretching?
You make a flatter image
Yeah.
because when you print an image, especially an astronomical image, you're essentially doing quite a dramatic stretch. So and the contrast changes dramatically as well. So it's a bit of trial and error because it depends on your printer. And if you're using a printer service, it's even worse because then you have to tell them to turn off all their automatic stuff and do it the way you want it done. But yeah, it's a bit of a black art. That's all I'll say. Big subject.
Yeah, it is it is very difficult to get the image you like in a reasonable size from a printer.
Yeah.
The paper is so expensive and the ink is so expensive that you end up going to the trial and error method, and it costs you a fortune.
Yeah, well, you have to do that testing at home with the printer and get close and do print small prints. You don't have to print a full-size image.
You can also do
do
you
a
can also
5x7 or something.
You can also do test strips as well.
Yeah.
I mean that's a kind of a hangover from darkroom stuff, but you can make the same thing and just repeat it.
Yeah.
Using different treatments and then see which one you like.
Yeah.
Very good image though, Zen. It looks great on the screen.
lovely.
Nice,
nice.
beautiful colors.
And then something else I was playing with, again, just different palettes with the Elephant Trunk Nebula. Yeah, I like tight stars again, so I kind of enjoyed the extra detail you get by playing around with pixel math. So particularly like this outcome. Not a lot of
one-shot color, Zen?
Yeah, so it is a 533 MC, but I do dual band narrowband filters on it, so just up and enhance.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then when we get to this, when we get to the sun, it would be nice to kind of talk about solar photography as well. But this was my first attempt recently. Yeah, I'm also traveling down to Dallas and to try and enjoy the eclipse with my family, but also capture some totality. So
good.
Yeah.
So are you going to be setting up your mount down there, Zen?
Yes. So I have a lighter mount to travel with. That's an EQM35 that I'll take. and then set it
Okay,
up.
so here's what happened to us at the last eclipse. A number of us set our mounts up backwards.
Okay.
Oh,
So make sure that you're pointing at the North Star, not some other place.
I'll tell you, it's really easy to do, and I'm only saying that because I did it.
Well, so did I. Like, what's going on here, guy? You're like, holy smokes.
There's actually quite a cool app that you can use that helps you do polar alignment, that you just basically put it in and it helps you align before. So I'm hoping that'll stop me from doing that.
Well, start doing it soon, like way before the eclipse, okay?
Yeah.
Good grief.
Well, do you have a what's the make of your mount? Do you have like a park level
Yeah.
option?
QM35, yeah. So Pro. So it's yeah. What do
So
you need?
there's a
Yeah.
really easy way to daytime polar align. If you go somewhere, and I don't know, if you dial in your latitude into the mount to start, and then you put it on level, you say, okay, go to park 1, it's normally called park position 1, or horizontal park, or whatever. And then you refine your altitude setting with a spirit level on your telescope. So once you do that, you know you've got the altitude setting right. And if you've got a go-to system with the solar scope, you just say, okay, now go to the sun.
Yeah.
And then you should be able to get the sun in your telescope by just using the azimuth control. And if you do that, that's just great for being and staying on the sun.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's good enough for observing the sun, and I'm sure imaging the sun.
So part of this was practicing that. So I did a full setup with basically a new mount, and the app that I was using was quite good. You actually mount your phone into the mount, and it uses basically your coordinates and the the compass and everything level inside of your phone.
Oh, okay.
Give you a dot to point at. But the hardest part is making sure that everything's aligned. If everything's aligned mechanically, then it works pretty well. And I left the mount running, doing that method, so daytime aligning. And I had it basically in frame for over an hour without having trouble. So that worked really well.
Yeah, that's certainly good enough.
Good enough, yep.
That's an amazing shot. It's a white filter shot, right?
Yeah. So just the beta foam that I have the Zenith Star 61, and they have the Batinov masks built into the cap. So basically screwed it out and built a little basically a little filter using the beta foam that I screwed back in. So it's perfect for me to be able to take it on and off.
Zen, can you zoom in on that? I'd like to see the spots. Ah, yeah, very nice.
Wow, look at that. Nicely done.
Excellent. I was curious about that spot because it is pretty amazing spot there.
Yeah, it is.
Well, a grouping
quite
of spots.
something.
It's a
Yeah.
group, actually.
I was
Well, it
looking
has
at
one
the other
number, but
day,
it's certainly
and
not one spot. You photographed the exact same time I did.
Yeah, very nice.
So I did a bit of research into what's causing the activity and what's causing the spots on its solar maximum and solar minimum cycle.
Mhm.
So it's actually when during quiet periods everything's just constant, but then this dynamo inside the sun every 11 years, I guess, decides to flip the North Pole and South Poles around. So the magnetic field totally reverses itself. And while it's reversing is when you get all this solar activity, and the magnetic fields are apparently all over the place. And that's what causes all the extra solar activity. So every, between every minimum, there's a flip in the poles, which I thought was really cool. And
It was certainly a nice morning to go out. I don't know if when you took your photo, Joe, when I put on my eclipse glasses, and you could actually see some of the sunspots through the eclipse glasses just before we took it. So
Yeah, I followed up my photograph with observing with my binoculars, and it was a real treat. Yeah, it was about the same time, around 10:30.
One thing I'll point out in these spots, I learned this in a course that I took last year, but you can see the latitudes. The sun has kind of like an equator and different levels as well, but they tend to travel near the middle, so you can actually see where that big clump of sunspots are. I have to dig up the application, but there's an application that you can take your photograph and overlay it over the globe, and it'll actually show you the latitude of the sun, the coordinates on the sun. I'll see if we can dig that up actually.
okay.
There was a really good time lapse that NASA released that showed the sun over, I don't know if it was over years, but it was amazing. You could really see the bands of latitude, which really stood out in that because
Exactly.
it was accelerating all of that time. But I had no idea that it was related to that until I saw that, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to in the clear spells, when you see a spot, watch it over days, like just photograph it over days, and you can see the thing kind of traveling across, and you get a better feel for the latitudes as well on the sun.
so what's the rotation?
It's about, I think it's around well, the speed is different depending on whether it's near the top or near the middle or near the bottom.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's near the middle. Probably it takes about 4 or 5 days for a spot to go from one side to the other.
Oh, okay.
But do it for yourself, and you'll see how fast they travel.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of which, I managed to take one picture of the sun myself. So this is the first picture I've ever taken. And I made some mistakes. But if I just share
So
this.
you're human after all, are you?
Oh. I think this is it.
Oh,
Am I
wow.
share? Did I share the
Oh,
screen?
very nice.
You did,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can see it.
Okay.
Wow, David.
So this was hydrogen alpha. So you can see some things better with hydrogen alpha, and some other things you can't see as good. You don't get, there's a couple of sunspots here. There's one there and one there, but they don't really stand out as nicely as they do with a white filter. So I'm still humming and hawing. I took this with a color camera, but they are recommending if you do hydrogen alpha of the sun, you use a mono camera, because essentially only the red pixels are picking up much, although I did get signal on all three, of course. But you can
Yeah,
see.
I don't think I would agree with that. I don't think it really matters what sensor you use. You're only getting red anyway.
Yeah,
It doesn't really matter.
yeah,
Except for you have more pixels working on it, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
Well,
You do. Yeah.
Well, if you use a DSLR, you have even more pixels. So
but there's these magnetic lines.
Yep.
That we can see. I think these are in 3D, so I think these are actually coming out of the sun, and you can see a couple of prominences on the edge here. And I'm still wondering whether I should photo the eclipse with, maybe I'll try with both, but that raises the level of confusion. But, you know, is one going to detract from the other? Is it, I'm still wondering whether I should do a white filter for a, you know, a cleaner view of the eclipse itself, or do I do hydrogen alpha image? I'll see.
You probably could do both, David. I mean, do you have a telephoto lens that you can engage for doing an overview and then use your telescope or use your solar scope for the other one?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. This
You have
is
a red cat. You have a red cat, don't you?
yes, I have a red cat, but it doesn't have the hydrogen alpha filter
But
on
you
it.
could put you could put beta film on top of it.
I could do that.
Yeah.
This is the frame of my planetary camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that I can't capture the whole sun in that. So I either have to get a reducer for this particular telescope or something.
Don't you have a DSLR?
I do
Yeah,
have
that
a
would work too.
DSLR. I could try that one.
Mm-hmm.
Might need a flattener as well, but try that.
Yeah.
Try it out ahead of time. You don't have a whole lot of time left.
So
I'm trying.
my usual optics for the sun is actually a 300 millimeter telephoto lens with a 1.4 converter on it. So I'm shooting like 420, and the sun is nowhere near the edges. I mean, it's just in the middle, but it occupies maybe, I don't know, a half to 2/3.
Well, the entire sun is it's actually fairly small in this telescope. But this is a planetary camera and its pixels are really small and the chip itself is really small.
Yeah.
You're getting some good detail thanks to the CCD,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Now,
Do you have to use a planetary camera?
no, I
No.
don't. No, I don't. I tried putting my 2600 MC on with sharp cap, and I was getting a little bit flustered. But what I wasn't getting was an image coming through sharp cap. So I said, oh, I'll try again another day. So, and the other thing that was totally new was processing this. So I watched a video on how to process solar, and he was loading up some new programs that I hadn't seen. I tried loading them up and I was getting all confused as to what it does. And so after I went through AutoStacker, I tried to follow this, and he said, oh, if it's hydrogen alpha, don't deconvolve. And I went, well, why wouldn't I? And so I finally gave up on that, and I just loaded it into PixInsight and did deconvolution that way, by picking a PSF and then process it normal. But so if any of you have a favorite way of taking solar images or a way of processing, I'd be happy to hear it.
So David,
why
you
don't-
could get a different kind of granulation with white solar. Like if you use the beta film, you can get a certain amount of surface detail. But with the HA, you're getting potentially a better view of the faculae, you know, the ones that look like worms. So I don't know. I've never seen really worms on my beta film. Like I can get kind of an orange peel kind of effect. I'm gonna see if I have some images here.
So do you use video to take it, or?
Yeah, I did it both ways. I tried saving an SCR file, but that was just confusing the heck out of me.
Yeah, so that is a SIR file is kind of like a video, uncompressed video file.
Well, I said, well, I'm gonna do it with saving PNG images. And so I did it that way. I think because the sun changes so slowly, you don't have to have a high frame rate.
Well, there's lots of light there too, so.
Yeah.
Maybe
Although,
I'll jump in and just throw a wrench into the works here and just show you some images that I took way back in 2012 using a DSLR and my Lunt.
that'd be great, Joe.
Yeah, and
It's
Joe, after you're done, I'll show the granulation with the Beta film. I can show you what that looks like.
sure.
Oh, look at that.
So this is just sort of the unprocessed image, you might say, using a DSLR and a Lunt and one shot, nothing exotic. Okay,
So- So is that good, Joe? Are you happy with that?
yeah, well you let's go to this one here.
The problem is when you haven't done it before, you're going, should I be happy with that or not? You know?
Well, no, I mean, if you run, keep in mind, this is 2012. I wasn't running deconvolution. There was no PI. There was no exotic. All I did was Photoshop a little bit and used some AC/DC tools, which is my favorite. So this is just a crop. But then I said, okay, well, let's go to false color and do a Sobel filter on it. Okay, so here you have something which shows a huge amount of detail
Oh yeah.
in false color, and that's all the same image.
So what did you do there, Joe?
It's called Sobel. It's a second derivative filter you run on it, so it's taking the slope of the changes in intensity
Right.
and mapping them out to colors. So you can. I'm not suggesting you do this. I'm just saying keep your mind open because there's lots of ways to process solar images in particular. You don't have to follow the rules that are being touted on the web.
Yeah.
So
It's just data, and it's all one color. So do what you want with it.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's lots of other images here. You can go through my gallery online if you want. Zenfolio will show any of them to you right now. It seems to be really slow. But the other thing I suggest is just keeping it simple, and you can do that with, let's see if I can find my current.
So that's showing the second derivative of brightness.
Yeah. And it's called Sobel, S-O-B-E-L. But I mean, there's lots of filters out there. Try a few, see what you think.
Yeah.
It's just data, right?
I don't really
Oh, yeah.
understand. I don't understand the second derivative of lightness. I can understand the first, but the second, that's acceleration, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's cheating, I freely admit.
oh,
Anyway, this is my basically the same image. I think actually now that I look at it, it's probably a bit later than Zen's, but not too much later.
yeah.
And that's I'm using and what I'll be taking with me is a 100 to 500 zoom lens, and I have a 2x teleconverter for it, so it goes to 1,000 millimeters, and a Canon mirrorless camera, and a fixed tripod. I'm not fiddling with. I can't do any tracking on a ship, and I've taken solar. Total solar eclipse photos twice before from ship's deck, so I'm pretty confident I can get usable images.
But you have
From
to use fast shutter speeds, right?
Not too fast. I mean, the R5 is a great camera for using high ISO with very little noise, and I won't hesitate to go up into the tens of thousands.
Oh yeah,
in and get that famous gain that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
In order to help, because I mean the ship's decks are vibrating a little bit, and I tend to leave my image stabilization on, even
Mhm.
though I'm on a tripod, in
A-
order to
actually,
tune,
it's-
in
it-
order to
it-
tune that out.
It's actually is the best thing for it, actually.
Yeah,
If you've got vibration, just kick the VR in, even if you're on a support.
that's right. Yeah. So, you know, I just wanted to throw some things at you. I didn't want to
So the ship,
give you a recipe at all.
the ship will be at sea.
Of course. Yep. There will be a whole cluster of them out there. Hopefully they won't crash into each other. They're all going to be offshore from Mazatlan, going in slow passages, staying in the center, in the path of totality.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You had a
I-
speedboat, you might be able to keep up.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I have a picture here that I took in September.
oh yeah,
very
there
nice.
you go.
Oh, very
Oh,
nice.
that's great.
This is with
this
the
was after-
centers.
Yeah, well, I've got the
Yeah.
center's telescope to take up to the fair, and that day it was raining, and
Mhm.
so I didn't actually take it and set it up. But I had it at home the next day. It was sunny, and I was like, well, I've got this scope,
Yeah.
so
So that's a good example of granulation and faculae.
Yeah.
When I show you mine, you'll see the comparison between this type of surface treatment and what I've got with the white filter.
So Brock, what camera did you take that with?
I think I actually used your 1600.
Oh,
MM.
okay.
And I did it with PixInsight, or not PixInsight, with AutoStacker and Registax. Just did uncompressed video, and I have like I have a folder, or I have a folder full of these video files, and each video file, I've got about 20 video files, and each one of them's like 5 gigs, 6 gigs, 6 gigs. Like, they're massive files.
So did you image like thousands of frames
Good question.
or hundreds or?
Well, yeah, how do I find out? Let me have a look at this to see if the properties say.
I think most of the stacking routines give you statistics. They'll tell you how many they rejected
Yeah, I'm
and
sure
how many
if
they kept,
if I
right?
brought it in to that, it'll show me here. Let's have a look. Actually, no, there's text files. Oh, go away. Hold on. There's text files here that tell me. So this is 4656 by 3520, 13 frames per second. God, there's so many stats. Where's the number of frames? It's got to be here somewhere. Frames captured 403, and that was
Okay.
over how many seconds was that? That's 28 seconds. So yeah, but it worked out okay.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
Had
Very
really
nice.
kind of inventing. It was a bit tricky to bring out because the prominences are much dimmer. So I kind of had to actually, I think I just used a circle highlight, like a highlight, and just hand drew a circle so that
Yeah.
I could mask the exterior of the sun away from the interior.
right.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
pretty. That's
I just
actually
played.
that's actually pretty normal. People
Is that?
often expose the outside and then the surface and then combine them. It's usually a composite. If it
Yeah,
looks really good, it's a composite.
Well, it was the
Yeah.
same image. I just did the exposure, like I stretched
Yeah.
essentially the outer portion, the prominences
Yeah.
more than the inner bit.
So David, I can show you the white granulation, what comes from white solar. Can you see that?
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very
So
nice.
you can
That's-
see the granulation.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit different. It's
Yeah.
excuse me, it's not as contrasty,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Being mono, it actually makes it look a little bit more stark, I think.
Mhm. I think it shows off some of the sunspot detail in some.
Oh
of them
yeah,
better.
yeah, for sure. I mean, you can see this stuff here very nicely here.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
the trick,
that's something hydrogen alpha does not show well, or sunspots.
correct. So
Yeah, I found.
what's nice about this is this if you photograph this as it moves across, what you'll find is you'll see these things first, and then as it moves across the face of the sun, it'll start to kind of dissipate a little bit. You'll start to see this pooling around it. So that's kind of cool to see. And then this edge effect is kind of cool too. You'll see something, and if you've seen it here, you'll see it kind of distorted when it goes around the corner.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, even up here, you can see this
Oh,
this
yeah.
kind of
Totally.
like granulation here. You don't get the faculae, like I said, but this is the orange peel, what I call the orange peel effect. Yeah. So that's what white solar is. Now you can very readily color this yellow if you wish,
Mhm.
but not everybody does.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the picture I took, it was just grayscale, and I just basically went into the curves and dragged down the blue and green, I think, or mostly the blue, and messed around until I got an interesting looking color.
Yeah. So to treat these, I hate to say it, but I just use Photoshop, and I use the shadow highlight function in Photoshop, and I stretch the heck out of it, right?
Mhm.
And that's how you get the granulation.
Right.
And
Well,
Photoshop
before
has a lot of those same filters that I was showing off before.
Yeah.
If you want to play around with some of the more exotic filters, you can tease out a lot of detail out of the even just white light.
Oh
No
yeah,
problem.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
then you
absolutely.
can combine a white filter with a hydrogen alpha filter.
Well, you could keep the proms, for instance, on the
You
outside
keep the
if you want
primes, but
to.
you could even blend the surface features together.
You probably
Yeah.
can. Yeah, you probably
That
can.
might be a fun thing to do.
It would
Mhm.
be.
Yeah, for partials, of course, for total eclipse, most people are looking outside the solar disk.
Yeah,
They're looking at the edges and they're looking for streamers.
Mhm.
yeah,
So it's a whole different processing game when you're under the path of totality,
yeah.
and the exposures are very
You need
different too,
massively different
obviously.
exposure. Yeah.
But would you use a hydrogen alpha filter then? Would you see anything?
Sure, people do, but
Oh yeah,
you don't really need it. But
yeah.
sure, no, people
Well, it doesn't
do the
deliver.
composites and all that stuff. You could look online, you'll see lots.
Mhm.
It
So when
doesn't
you see
deliver
those
more corona or
amazing,
anything.
with those amazing corona photos people take, are those just with white visual, like just white light?
Mhm.
Well, you don't have a filter on.
Exactly,
Keep in
but you
mind.
don't.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So it's not. You don't need any special filter to see that detail.
Yeah.
No,
I'll show you. I'll show you one more. This one I've colored, and this one gives you an example of where you have an edge effect, like during a partial, and then you have a sunspot that's really close to it. So you can see the spot here. So this is kind of cool. So if you happen to have a spot that's near the edge, that's always kind of cool. And of course, you'll see the
mountains on the moon.
Yeah, you see the mountains on the moon. Exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
Is this was 2014?
Yeah, October 23rd, 2014.
Yeah,
Oh,
we've
that's
had a few
awesome.
partials from Victoria, that visible from Victoria.
Yeah. I think I snuck out of work or something like that.
You can see the surface inconsistency of the moon there, right?
Oh, you
Yeah,
can.
totally.
You can. That was
Yeah.
yeah. I think I took this during a coffee break. I went
I think
out around 2 or so.
I have that exact picture.
Do you?
Like almost the exact same moment with the exact same moon bumps and everything else.
Where were you?
I was at home in my garage.
Oh, October 23rd, 2014.
I think, or was it? No, what? Yeah, I mean, it must have been that same eclipse. But
Well, maybe I'll just bring us back to totality, since Zen will be on the center line. I don't know if Zen, have you looked at the 2017 total solar eclipse collection on our website?
I did.
Yeah. So you saw John McDonald's work.
It wouldn't load for me because Zenfolio was just
Yeah, they've been doing maintenance, and they've actually been changing the whole platform underneath. So it's a bit of a dog's breakfast. But this is obviously using HDR technique, multiple exposures at various exposure lengths. It's a DSLR,
that one's
and
spectacular.
it's, that's the whole idea here, is to capture this stuff here.
Mhm.
And the streamers are unique, of course, for every eclipse. And so it's really interesting to capture those as best you can. So you have the 4 minutes or whatever you have in Texas to work with. Try to, if it's your first one, try to make sure you see it visually first. But
I wonder if those are the poles where all the magnetic lines are all concentrated.
Well, it's kind of like that.
well, you
but
can see the equator. This is the equator, obviously.
Mhm.
So you can see them spreading out from there. Yeah,
Well, why would you say that?
just the way it is, I think.
Well,
He's
that's
got it
the
right.
mag-
He's
the-
got it right way up. I know
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
the magnetic field.
It's the magnetic
magnetic.
poles, I would say.
Yeah. So the other thing is, David, do you notice there's these little bumps, those prominences? They're typically right underneath of what we call the helmet streamers, the ones that look like flames. So basically, underneath, above every prominence is typically a helmet streamer. So that's what you're
okay.
actually seeing there.
Yeah.
So Zen, further to what Joe is saying, now, Joe, help me out if I'm mistaken here. I remember looking at the streamers through binoculars, and they were actually looked like strands of hair,
Mhm.
Yeah.
opposed to a smooth surface like the pictures do. Is that right?
Yes.
So it's quite spectacular to see it visually. It's something you'll have to
Visually, you just get more detail. There's just no avoiding it.
buy a ton. Yeah, so
Yeah,
don't
because
get some binoculars, take them with you, and you can actually look at it without anything on the front when it's in totality, and it's just spectacular.
it's going to be a busy 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
the
even-
automatic program going.
Yeah, so I have the program, but this would be my second totality, but I think this one will be more special than 2017 because.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you saw 2017.
But at
Great.
the same
Yeah.
time, if I'm gonna have technical difficulty, I think you call it pretty early. You shouldn't be messing around with.
No, you know, if you do it right, Zen, you can just trigger it and then observe visually
Yeah.
while it's taking pictures.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
you don't need to do anything.
Yeah,
Are
so
you-
there's
are
a
you-
thing that you can do a preset exactly, and it tells you when to take the filter off.
Yep.
Tells you when to put it back on. But
That's
again,
good.
I think if you're gonna have trouble with your equipment, and like, don't be frustrated. It's an amazing experience. Totality is something that's very surreal. So
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
you've done it then. I didn't know you did it already.
David, is this the same view that you had?
Let me just have a look. It looks similar. It sure
Nice.
looks like it. Is it October 23rd?
Those look the
think so.
same.
I think it's the same. This was with my fancy technique, like doing this.
Oh, right, on
okay.
paper. Yeah,
And then I
the
just took a-
projection.
Wow.
This picture is actually of the transit of Venus, but same method.
Same
sitting
idea,
in-
yeah.
Little did I know that you in Brentwood,
Yeah.
Brentwood were doing exactly the same thing. I'm looking at it right now. They look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look the same.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Are you traveling, Zen? Are you going somewhere for this?
Yeah, I'm flying to Dallas with
Oh,
my
okay.
wife and my toddler. So we're gonna have we wanted to be pretty flexible. So we have something booked close to San Antonio. But I want to see what the weather is going to be like and be able to travel. But there's going to be so many people flying down. They're already doing state of emergency announcements. And
Oh, really?
especially the small towns.
Yeah.
Basically stock up on food and fuel because you're going to have a huge amount of people coming.
Well, they were saying there were going to be some towns that are just tiny little towns, and they're going to be like a million. Well, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration to say there's going to be a million people there. I mean, they're going to be constrained by the arteries, right?
Texas is
Constrained by the
awfully
roads.
big. There's lots of
Yeah.
space in Texas. The biggest problem is going to be the roads, but in the more remote areas. But I mean, other than that,
Yeah.
as we found out, of course, in 2017. Oh well.
Well, I wish you luck.
Okay.
It should be fun.
Well, thank you.
So is everyone game for a little demo or?
Sure.
Don't forget to show us those prints at the end.
Those prints?
The metal prints.
I can show you the prints first, actually. Oh, no, I'll do this first.
Yeah.
Shared the screen. So, something Brock had mentioned is when extracting of the stars doesn't quite work out. This is a colored image. I had stretched it, but I hadn't increased the saturation. But what I tend to do is, create 3 images, one for the stars, one for color, and one for the luminance, which is either luminance images or extracted from my color image. This was an RGB image. I took lots of luminance and I just did.
You know you're not sharing, eh?
Oh, I'm not sharing.
No.
Right.
Although it is interesting watching you talk,
helps.
we'd rather see the picture.
And you're shooting mono? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm shooting mono.
Yeah.
But I do the same thing with my color camera. If I shoot RGB, then I just extract the luminance.
Mhm.
So you make it give you the entire luminance.
So Dave, are you saying you shoot RGB? You don't do an L? You don't do a luminance?
If I have a mono camera, I do. If I'm using my color camera, I can't.
And then you extract the luminance
So I
out of the
extract.
RGB.
Sometimes when I'm using a mono camera, I will extract a luminance from the RGB and combine it with my L. If I think there's more details to be added here.
Right.
But at the end of the day, your luminance should be used to worry about the detail, because you can use a bunch of techniques on the luminance that will mess up your colors.
Right.
On luminance, they will work just fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had the trouble when I did Blur Exterminator and followed up by Star Exterminator on this, because both those programs, Blur Exterminator does the deconvolution and Star Exterminator does the star extraction. But you can see there's a whole bunch of, in this luminance, there's a whole bunch of tiny galaxies in the back here. So when I went to do Blur Exterminator, it misidentified some of these galaxies as stars and made them nice and compact and as star-like as it possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of a mess. So then, of course, they were stars. So Star Exterminator just extracted them completely from the starless image. So the way I did that is actually ran Star Exterminator before Blur Exterminator. And then,
So the order matters, in other words.
Yeah.
well, just because I didn't want Blur Exterminator, I wanted a basis from which I could look at the star image, and over the starry image, I didn't load the starry image up, but I put little game filters around the galaxies that it was mistaking as stars. Then I covered up the luminance with this, and then if I just showed the mask, this isn't actually what I was going to talk about, but this.
So you're protecting them, right?
Invert the mask, and so it protected those galaxies. So then I could go do my Blur Exterminator, then extract the stars, and it left what was behind these little filters. It left them in the starless image.
Mhm.
So
So
that
so this is where you're using your judgment. You're using your judgment rather than using AI.
Yes, it's just helping the AI a little bit,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to go through every galaxy and do this. I didn't want to do that, just the ones that were going on. So then I could do my so then I did my Blur Exterminator and Star Exterminator to get my linear image. So I don't know if you can really tell, but you know, there's quite a lot of detail. If you look at the galaxy, I'll try to get side by side here. If you look at the galaxy here, Blur Exterminator sort of brought quite a bit of detail into the galaxy that didn't exist before I did it. And a lot of people will do this, and they'll go, "Oh, that's really cool. There's my there's my galaxy at the end of the day," and they'll go forward to that. But there's a couple of things you can do with it even after you. So here is that starless image after I stretched it with GHS. Now, you know, some people like to start off with GHS in a nebula, and some want to start off with a standard screen transfer stretch or histogram transfer stretch, and then use GHS. But for galaxies, I always find it's way better because you get such a narrow brightness peak that if you use GHS, it's great for getting in there and separating it out. So this is the same, this is just that stretched, but there's a couple of things that I always do. Now, it's a little bit more complicated with a galaxy than with a nebula that takes up the entire picture, but it's this wavelet transform that this multi-scale transform. So what it does, it looks at wavelets of different size and applies contrast to the different wavelet sizes, depending on the number of wavelets that you have, right? So you can actually vary this to look at fine scale, adding fine scale contrast and coarse scale contrast. And I usually start off with 6. Now, because most of a galaxy nebula is dark, and it doesn't really work that well when it's applying over an image that's dark. So what I do is create a preview, say over a galaxy, and I just want to make sure that the edges of my preview are in dark areas, but it allows me to focus in on a specific thing in an image. And if you go to a preview, if you look at the preview, I can apply And I would start off with this number being 6 in the number of pixels that that defines the wavelet, and leave this on spline or some small scale that's just larger or the same size as your number of layers. So for here, I would use Gaussian 6, but leaving on B3 spline is fine too. You can try the different ones and just make sure that your lightness mask and to intensity mask is good. And then you can just apply this over that image. You'll go away and think about it. And by going back and forth in the preview, it hasn't actually changed the image at all. It's just done this on the preview. And when you go back and forth, you can see what it's done to the image. Okay. So let's say, oh, I kind of like what that's doing to the image. You can change this number and say change it to 5. You can change this to Gaussian 5 and see how it's bringing out the detail. You can see at level 5, it's not doing anything to the contrast at a big level. It's doing the contrast thing at a smaller level. And you'll see brighter things tend to get dimmed. And I usually have GHS open at the same time, so I can see, close that. So I can see what it's doing to the histogram at the same time as I'm changing it. You can see how it changes the histogram. Now, when you do this, and when you do this, you say, well, it's a bit severe what it's doing. So what I want to do is when I find one that I like, say 5 and 5 there, there's a script that comes standard in PixInsight. It's substitute with preview. And what I meant to do is keep let me cancel that for a second. You always want to keep your base image safe. So make a clone of it. But then you say, okay, there's this utility that's very handy, is what it does is it substitutes the preview back into the original image. So when you say okay there, it's actually just replaced what's in that galaxy, just what's in the preview box. It's replaced it with what this function did in the preview box.
Mhm.
And it's called a new image. And I would just label this, say, final view 5. Okay. And I would also make another one. I'm doing this as I go along. So maybe I do one at 6 because I kind of liked what it did. Back to the preview. Make sure you do it in the preview. I don't have to reset the preview. It'll reset it itself. Here's what I did with 6. Right? Maybe I like that. Some characteristics of that. So I would just go in, script, utilities, substitute with preview, and I like that, and it substitute the 6. So now I've got my original, image. I've got what I did with 6 wavelengths, and I've got what I did with 5 wavelengths. So then I just simply go, well, each one of these ones that I did is kind of hard. So I would go in and say all processes and say pixel math. And then I would just blend those images in whatever proportions that I would like. Usually what I do is I'll weight the original image at a factor of 0.5. So which one is which? Oops. I would weight that, oops. At 0.5. And then I'd add to that, say, a 0.5 weighting of all the other images. And maybe I want to weight 0.6 times the one I did at 5 plus 0.4 times the one I did at, sorry, that was the one I did at 6, but the one I did at 5. So you see what I'm doing is I'm saying, oh, I want to take 50% of the original image and 50% of a weighting of my process, and so that everything adds up to one image. So as long as all these factors will add up into one complete image, and I'll say, okay, here, and I'll say, just create a new image that's my HDRMT process. So loom underscore HDRMT. And I will make that work. And here's the result right here. So what I've done is I've added a really cool increase in detail over that galaxy by doing that. So I'll do a combination of up to 4 HDRMTs at different numbers of layers and recombine them, each for this entire galaxy image. But you see, I've got another galaxy over here. So all I do is with my HDRMT image is take a preview around this galaxy.
So David, a quick question about the previews that you're creating. Do you have to be careful that they don't leave like a rim around the rectangle?
Yeah, you do. If you
Okay.
at the higher wave numbers, if I crank this up to 11, say, just like
Yeah.
Spinal Tap. If you go to 11, because if you only go to 10, then where do you go? From there, you can't go anywhere. So, oh, sorry. I gotta change this to 11. You see, there'll be a lot of large scale brightening and stuff going on here, right? And you'll find if your preview is not big enough, you'll actually leave a square.
Right.
But if you, I sometimes, if my image is a nebulosity that covers the entire image, I make my preview essentially the entire image. Check out which ones I make, what wavelet layers, and I will go up to 10 or 11 when I've got that sort of image. But generally, you wouldn't go up there for something with a galaxy. You might go up to 8.
It's actually too bad you can't feather the preview selection.
Oh, not really, because
No?
all that does is it messes up your histogram, right? You've got nowhere to brighten afterwards. And even 8 for this tiny galaxy, the smaller the object, you'll find the smaller the number of wavelengths you went. So 5 would probably work pretty good on this guy.
Mhm. So it's starting to sound like you should be really subtle with these things. Don't go too heavy-handed.
Yeah, now if you ignored the original image, and the reason why I weighted it 0.5 in my summation of the images, you can easily make it look over processed. So I usually, if I get a result when I do that combination and it looks overly processed, I'll back it off a little bit and weight the base image, say 60%. Or if it doesn't look like it's giving enough detail, I may well weigh the original image 40%. And then I usually go down, if I have 4 other images, I'll, weight them 0.4 to my favorite to 0.1, usually at the smallest scale, whatever. You have to play with it. But at the end of the day, once you've done the bigger galaxies, sometimes it's worth just taking a shot at just a single wavelet number, and it's usually a small one. Here's a galaxy that it's really small. It's probably as small as you'd go after. But even looking at something like that, you'd say, oh, you'd go to small wavelets, but you say, oh, that might be enhanced a little bit. Maybe that's a little too small. Maybe 4. I gotta change the scale. But you see, if I go back and forth from the preview, you see the details adding into this little one. Now I wouldn't make multiple wavelets for these little ones. I'd just go straight into that utility, substitute with preview, and say, after I've done all the galaxy work, right? Because you don't want to create differences. You want to keep going, marching forward, and just say, okay. And lo and behold, it will have substituted that image in there. And then if you're game for one final thing you can do to enhance the detail in your image is, I think I've got.
How big a monitor do you
So
have?
many images.
Hey, Dave,
Yes, sir.
how many monitors? How big is your monitor?
That big.
How?
Oh, big.
So I have 2 of them.
Okay.
So the one I'm using right now is the one that's not calibrated.
Oh, but I mean, it's size-wise, like you've got all this stuff there. I'd get lost there with a smaller monitor.
Yeah. I haven't been doing my normal housekeeping. Is once you fix one galaxy, then delete all these other images, or you get lost, right?
Hmm.
But the one other thing I wanted to show you. I'll open it again. So here was the light file after I did all my galaxy work. And the next step to add some detail is local histogram equalization. So there's a couple of parameters here. I can get rid of this. Preview. It looks like this. And it comes up with these as your defaults. So what I found works for me is I do this kernel radius right at the top, and I only contrast limit, you can go crazy, but I only either use 2 or 1.5, right? Anything else is way too much. It is so easy to overdo this and just destroy your image. But it's got a preview function, so I can always look at the preview. And you can see that it is trying to balance the histogram all over the image. And it comes up with the amount of 1. And simply I crank the radius up as high as it'll go, and then turn down the amount. And usually I ended up like 20% is the amount. And I'm happy there.
I like the other one first.
You like the first one? Well,
Just kidding.
if you turn this down to 0, you'll get the.
No, I mean, I meant the one where it's 1 instead of 0.2.
You like this one? Well, it's a matter of taste, right?
I was just kidding.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
Just-
that is pretty spectacular what that does.
yeah.
Well,
so-
I think it is a matter of taste, like you can make it more dramatic by making the sky darker, but then you lose a lot of the subtle detail, right?
Yeah.
Right. What this high kernel radius is good for larger chunks of nebulosity. If you look at the edges of this galaxy, you can see the arms sort of come out. But when I apply this, I'll do a little bit more. You see how it makes the whole galaxy kind of stand out from the background.
Mhm.
But again, if you do this too much, you'll end up making it look over processed, and that's what you really want to avoid. And then for fine details, you can go back up to a small scale. Now you can see how that's really making that galaxy look kind of artificial, right? So at a small kernel radius, so I just crank this all the way down, you really want to be careful not to use too much of this. So keep it really low, but you can still see there's a difference there. Maybe not that low. But you got to do these things on the luminance. If you do it with your color image, it'll go crazy. So in the end, what I tend to use is this image blend script, where you can just put in the luminance. Oh no, I do an LRGB combination. That's for stars. Then you just take your color image, put your luminance in as you normally would, and all those details that you worked on the luminance will be combined with the color work you do in you do the color work on your RGB image, combine them, add back in the stars, and here's my result. And you can see a lot of the detail. You've got the dust lanes going right into the center of the galaxy, and you've got these outer arms still visible, and even this galaxy, the detail you kind of pull on that small galaxy. And there was our friend up in the corner there. So that's all I wanted to show you here.
Nice.
But
Very good.
it's just, going beyond just doing the deconvolution to bring out some luminance details.
Wow,
Thanks.
pretty good stuff, David.
No, that's interesting. It almost sounds like you kind of have to sneak up on it, right? You don't want to. You want to use little scalpel kind of things, right? Not too much, not too grand.
Yeah.
a change, right?
So I did want to just talk about briefly about getting, and I'm not sure how this is going to show up. Printing out your images. Maybe do I have to de-blur my screen? Maybe.
You'll probably have to point it away from lights because we'll see reflections.
Yeah, it will be. Shouldn't be. The lights are all coming from above.
Okay.
I'm just looking at a picture of me.
Your background's still blurred.
Well, we see
Yeah,
the screen. We see the screens
I have
now, I
to-
guess.
Oh, that's better. Oh yeah, we'll still see the screen.
Yeah, that's the problem. Oh, can you shut? Oh, can you shut your? You can't shut your screens off, can you?
If you tell me how.
But then you won't be able to see to turn it back on. Mere technicalities.
So what do you see when I hold it up? You don't
Well,
see-
we see the
David,
we see
you
your
David
monitors.
Lee's
Actually, if you
reflection.
Yeah, you see me.
put it at an angle, David. Put it at an angle.
Oh yeah, point it away from your screens. Tilt
Yeah.
it.
There you go.
That's it. That's
getting
better. That's better.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Okay, good, good.
move back. Dave,
Yeah,
move back a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, that
There you
worked.
go. And
Well,
then
that's not-
don't point it at the screens. Tilt it up maybe a little bit.
So I show you the image. You have to take my word. That looks really good.
Nice.
Is
That's
it under glass?
It's under glass.
Okay.
And that's on metal.
Because that's part of the story. Because I have this Canon 100 Pixma 100 photo printer. And it's done like daylight, just a great job on daylight images for me. And but when I tried to print Astro images, it just looks flat, particularly on matte paper. But
Yeah.
the problem with glossy paper is it's considerably more expensive. Right?
Does a better job though when it comes to Astro.
That's why it's
You,
more
you may
expensive.
you may notice the calendars I do. I always do them on heavy stock glossy. It's for a reason.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. But I wish I could, do my proofs on the matte paper and then okay, I'm ready to go now. Put my one
But you
sheet of
can't.
glossy, but it doesn't work that way.
No.
It got better when I would load them into Lightroom and then save it as a TIFF that was especially made for printing as opposed to displaying. So it would change the color mapping for printing.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
helped, but
Yeah.
not completely. I found I had to stretch it differently.
Yeah. So not only and Brock will tell us this, but I've been learning a little bit more about color gamuts and devices, and even the colors are not uniformly distributed over gamuts. Like I didn't know that. I just learned that recently. They said, well, there's color shifts. If you go from one color gamut to another,
Mhm.
they may not even cover off certain colors, right? So then you get a shift, right? Get a color
Right.
shift.
And you're not even talking about different types of paper.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not even
You're
talking
talking
about
about
paper.
ink.
I'm just talking about ink. I'm just talking
So-
about ink.
So
Oh yeah, it's a big subject.
yeah. Well, for a poor guy like me, I'm learning far more than I wanted to know about this. Right? And then I saw someone had done an Astro image. I can't remember where I saw it. They had printed it on aluminum. And I went, that's the cat's meow. That's what I want. Okay. So what did I ended up doing at the end of the day is I said, well, how much does it cost to print it on aluminum? It can be a few $100s, right? And I really want to make sure I liked it before I got an image on aluminum. and I was surfing, what is the issue? And I saw that London Drugs prints on something called metallic paper.
Yep.
And not only that, London Drugs has all the software that if you print like what you see on sRGB, or I guess Adobe RGB if you wanted that one, although I'm getting out of my depth even talking about that.
Yeah, it's a different gamut again.
But if you like it on sRGB, they told me that you will like it the way they print it, because they have all the stuff that changes the gamut from, because that's normally you submit your photo online and you say, give me this. You kind of match the size of the paper to match the dimensions of your image. And you submit it. And for this one, which was 16 by 24, I think, was $50,
Not too bad.
which is expensive, but not overly expensive.
A lot cheaper than printing it yourself.
Yeah,
A lot cheaper
that
than
just sounds
printing
cheap.
yourself, and a lot less learning to do.
Yeah.
And then the frame is Michael's, right? So it's kind of important, I think, if you get a real glass frame. It's not like the frame, it's not the glass you would put on a piece of art because it's too reflective. But if you're going to put it outside of
Is it like anti-glare?
shiny lights,
Is it anti-glare glass or
no, it's not. It's
Oh.
not.
full glare? Full glare.
So
glass.
David, I was looking forward to seeing how you're going to get a sheet of metal through your printer. And now you're
Well, if you want, I am going to get one printed one day on metal, but I would first get it printed on the metal
Paper.
paper
okay.
to as a proof, because it's instead of tens of dollars, it's hundreds of dollars to get that print.
Well, good for you.
So my printing journey is, I've got a system now. Anyone want to buy a big color printer?
That's why I don't own one.
Well, it takes up a lot of space too, but anyways, that's the story there.
So David, so you were saying that if you like it in sRGB, which is, and you got a calibrated monitor, you know, it's light as you'd like, colors, etc., that when you go to print on a metallic paper in, you know, the London Drugs black box and stuff like that, they do the transformations, whatever needs to be done. But what comes out on that metallic paper is looking like what you have on the screen. It's not dark, and you know, if you just print on the regular glossy paper, it's always dark, and its colors are a bit of a crapshoot and whatnot. But you have to stretch it different. You know, I think you mentioned that. But you're saying that you get satisfaction from the metallic paper off of a color calibrated monitor. You're going to see something that's quite similar.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
In fact, I could see the darks even as good as on the monitor, right?
Yeah.
The aluminum has the, you know, what the nice thing about the aluminum is the stars really shine.
Right.
Maybe not as good as printing on aluminum, but I mean, two things. London Drugs obviously wants me to come back. So I think they're used to the operator there knows what to do with
Astro?
with well, or with something that's in sRGB, right?
Well, they're just mapping the two gamuts between the screen and the paper, and they've got it dialed in because they've been doing it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So I just submitted it and said, let's see. And
I mean,
was-
typically a service bureau, if they know what to look for, they'll make it right for you.
Well, with a custom print, they would.
Oh yeah,
But
they will.
These are not custom prints.
I know,
London
I
Drugs
know.
is
But
doing
like for instance,
machine prints, basically.
if you go to Opus, for instance, the art store Opus, they have a calibrated monitor there. So basically, you bring your file, and irregardless of what you did at home, you can just look at it on their monitor, and that's the monitor that counts because that's the one that's calibrated for their printer.
yeah, okay, but it's still a monitor.
It is. Yep. It still is. Yep. Yep. But
So
it's their job to make them match, right? That's
I
their
know.
job.
But you know, I just submitted this to London Drugs and said, okay, it's metallic paper, whatever that is. I've never seen a piece of metallic paper, so I didn't even
Yeah.
know, and said, here's $50.
They're yeah, you're throwing $50 at them and say, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
came through.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's
Good
you know,
stuff.
it's
Yeah.
well into the somebody else's problem field, which is where I
Yeah.
like to put my problems.
Well,
Was that
just out of
$50
interest, does everybody have calibrated monitors, or is that kind of odd?
I do not.
Yeah, I have a monitor calibration,
Yeah,
But-
I calibrate my monitors.
and I'm
so-
using my Mac Studio monitor, which is well calibrated.
Because I mean, it does make a difference. I mean, I find it makes a difference.
I find it makes
Oh.
a difference. And what makes a difference is, I don't know, I'm using a BenQ, and it's got these
Mhm.
modes, like you go to sRGB mode or you go to
Mhm.
adult mode, and it's got this one darkroom mode,
Mhm.
which kind of enhances the dark areas. So as long as you remember that you're on that mode, you can really work with your dark stuff.
So normally when you
And-
calibrate your monitor, don't use the monitor's modes. Don't do that. Just start off with a standard setting on your monitor, and then run the colorimeter so that it creates a profile for you,
Yeah.
custom for the monitor, right?
I know,
Yeah.
but when you get older, your eyes don't necessarily work as well. So this just helps a little bit to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always go back to the calibrated sRGB I use. I always go back to that calibrated
Mode. Yeah.
mode, and or for the final result.
Yeah, BenQ, of course, sells calibrated monitors.
Hmm.
One of the few monitor
Yeah.
manufacturers that does. Hang on to your wallet, though.
Yeah.
No, they're not cheap.
That's
Well, I only
right.
have one of them.
Hey
Yeah,
Dave, when
well,
you were at Michael's,
worth
did
it.
you see any square frames for us poor folk who shoot OSC and 533 or
Matt,
don't
they-
laugh. They've got frames.
They make
Free
square
size.
frames, Matt.
yeah, I know. You can't even get them on Amazon, but good.
Oh, Michael's had all kinds of sizes.
Yeah. I'm a little uncomfortable going into Michael's, right? Because you're kind of ducking the knitters and you're going to past the earphones. And
Yeah,
you just tell them I'm here to service the fire system or something like that.
You have to go at the right times, Matt. That's
I
what
was
you have to do.
nervous at first.
Closing time.
You're right.
Well,
It's
they
all-
are the only source for some things.
Yeah, that's right.
I kind of missed what you said, Joe. Do you require extra hardware to calibrate then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll show it to you if you want. Oh, he'll show it to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
there's a
there's
couple
a
of
gizmo you put on your monitor,
yeah.
and it will calibrate the monitor for you.
Yeah.
It
There's
works.
two-
I
They
had
work
one
really
that was-
well.
There's
Yeah,
two
I
main
had one that was so old, I thought the software was out of date, or
yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
thing was out of
There,
date. So
there's two main
down in Valley
brands.
Village now.
Yeah, there's two main brands.
Oh, yeah.
There's Spider, and then what used to be X-Rite is now called Calibrate. And Calibrate's the one that is kind of like the old school one, the original Macbeth system. And then the Spider is a little bit more consumer, but they're both good. I use a Spider and I use Calibrate as well.
What's the price range?
They're anywhere from 250 to about 400, depending on which model you get.
You can get some of them for 150.
Oh yeah, you can
They
get
have,
cheap
they
ones
have a
too.
variety of models.
Yep. The cheapest models are on sale, probably like 150, 180, something
Yeah.
like that.
I would show you, but I'm not sure what I've done with it.
Oh, well, I'll get mine.
The differences tend to be how bright your
Oh, here it
screen
is.
is. Like if your screen is really, really, really bright, then you need the pro models. If your screen is not quite so bright, then you can get away with the cheaper
So it's
models.
just, this is the Spider X.
Yep.
So it just hangs, you know, this goes against the monitor, and there's just a little menu-driven little program. And then you save it as a file, and then you can see the color change. And you, at first you go, oh, that's pretty impressive when you do it. And then it gets annoying because it keeps reminding you
every month.
So many
So-
weeks.
I have a question.
And if you're a
guys.
photographer like me, then you can also get the
Wow.
Yeah.
the
Joe, have you got an
calibration
extra,
for.
you got an extra one of those, Joe? I need one.
No, they cost money. You have to go
No.
buy one.
One. So can I,
Just
this is an
print
old
it off.
X-Rite, this is an old X-Rite one. Can I still use this
Yeah.
somehow?
I don't know. Depends on the software still runs it, I guess.
But is there a new software that would run an old X-Rite one?
There is a generic piece of software. I can't remember what it's called, but it'll run with different colorimeters. But typically the colorimeter will come with its own software,
Yeah.
right?
This one's like 20 years old and the software is kind of
Mm,
gonzo.
I'd get a new one, I think.
Calibrating is a very, very deep dark hole to dive down
Yeah.
because there's monitors, there's printers, there's all sorts of equipment that all can be calibrated. And then if you don't know what you're doing, you don't have anything to show for it at the end.
It's not one of those how hard can it be things, huh?
Yeah. I mean,
It's-
how often does that happen?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another level of confusion for astrophotography.
Yeah, you'll find most of the time these things sit on the shelf.
Well, just one haphazard thing that messed me up is a Windows machine will only refer to one calibration. And the calibrated monitor has to be your primary monitor.
No, I've calibrated both my panels.
Yeah, you
I was
can,
able to
See you
do
guys
that.
later.
but Windows will only use one.
No, they both come up and they look the same. Like they're very different. My two panels are very different. And then when I calibrate them, when they boot up, it'll do the profile on one, and then it'll do the profile on the other. And then after that, they pretty well match.
Well, I tried everything to get it.
You guys need to talk.
You got to point. Well, I'll point it. Anyways, I could probably describe it to you.
Well, I
It's-
stopped trying to fix it when someone who was obviously a very experienced photographer talking about calibrating his monitors told me that you can only do it on one monitor with your Windows machine.
I was able to do it on two.
Yeah. And it has to be your first monitor. It has to be the one on the left, right? Or
You can put them on the other side, actually, believe it or not. You can
Right.
number them any way you want.
Primary. Yeah.
You can, but you know, when you move from your primary to your secondary, you can either move it to the left or move it to the right, but I tend to work like a book, right? So
Yeah. But you remember, you got number one, number two. They can be flipped around if you want.
yes,
You could do that too, right?
yes. So when you've got a big picture that takes up two monitors, you'll have the right hand side and the left, and the left hand side and the right.
You can't do the transformation in your brain.
Only if you're good at crossing your eyes.
Anyways. Okay, that's been great. And we're
Yeah.
out of time too.
Yeah, it's
Then
getting late.
anything
Thanks.
for,
Thank you, thank you.
thank you. Hopefully it was enjoyable.
Very interesting.
And
Good.
I really enjoyed seeing everyone's images and getting all this advice on taking pictures of the sun. We'll see what happens. No
Yeah,
pressure.
good luck. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye.